We're here today to talk about taxi cab driver safety. We have a distinguished panel of presenters and guests. We have Cami Menendez, Dr. Cami Menendez from NIOSH, the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. Shenki Zhang is here also from NIOSH. We have Malachi Hull, regulator past regulator of two cities, Atlanta and New Orleans. Also have Benoit Juga.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. To discuss taxi cab driver safety and measures that can be taken by any regulator to make taxi cab drivers safe in their jurisdictions. We want to get started with Malachi Hull with some measures that he put in place in New Orleans. Malachi?
Thank you, Jim. Good afternoon. My name is Malachi Hull, and as Jim said, I'm the former regulator for the cities of Atlanta as well as New Orleans. In 2012, the city of New Orleans underwent some major reforms, and one of the main things we wanted to focus on was cab driver safety and passenger safety. Something which, when we worked with Cami Menendez, who did a study for us on driver safety, we found out that New Orleans was a very dangerous city, which, you know, for the most part we knew, but it was very dangerous for cab drivers. Since 1994, we've had 22 cab drivers killed in the line of duty. Since 1996, that number goes up to 20. From 2010 through 2012, we had 7 drivers accused of allegedly sexually assaulting passengers. So we knew that we had a safety problem, and we wanted to make sure we improved that image. So some of the things that we did is, not only did we mandate credit card systems, things to make sure that drivers were carrying less cash and make it where they weren't targeted as much, but we also put safety cameras in. And there's a few things that we didn't compromise on when we implemented those things. One was who had access to those images. The City of New Orleans camera system has full video. We have dual cameras on the inside of the cars and a forward-facing camera which extends over the hood so individuals can actually see whether or not, who was involved in a vehicle accident. The chain of custody of evidence, that was important as well. The only individuals who have access to these images are vehicle for hire enforcement officers, the taxi cab bureau, or law enforcement officers. And the only way that they can access those images is if a police incident number has been generated or a complaint item number has been generated. Something else that we would not compromise on was image quality. We had to make sure that those camera images were visible clearly during the day as well as at night. Also, we wouldn't compromise on how long those images were stored. We mandated that there was a minimum of 2 weeks of data, so we have 14 days. And we'll talk about some specific things later on, but there was one incident that happened and we had camera images 6 weeks later. But this driver didn't drive as much, but the minimum is 14 days. The cameras have been very successful in the city of New Orleans in deterring crimes as well as solving crimes. Also, for my law enforcement friends, it also helps in reclassifying crimes. So we had a few incidents where those crimes needed to be reclassified. Also preserving evidence. I'm going to talk about a few major crimes that were solved with the camera systems. In the spring of 2013, we had a cab driver who sexually assaulted, or allegedly sexually assaulted, a young college student. The young college student the cab driver was not dispatched to the young lady. He was just riding around the street and she flagged him down. She didn't know anything about the vehicle that she got in. And when you go back and review the camera images, you see that the young lady is in the back of the car. She asks the guy to take her to a certain destination. She passes out, and then he sexually assaults her. So the camera images validated everything the young lady said took place. We also, this was interesting because we had to use the credit card systems, the data to identify every cab which was in that area of that incident. And we started to bring them in one by one to download the cameras. What was interesting about this is when we started to bring the drivers in, this driver was he was asking drivers, how do I erase my camera? Well, the systems that we have are different from what other jurisdictions. You have some jurisdictions which actually have removable memory cards that are in the head of the cameras. Well, ours are separate, so the camera system is separate, no matter what they do to that camera head, the images are still stored. And I'll talk a little bit about one where we had, my next incident was, we had a driver who was robbed on Christmas Eve 2012. And this driver basically told the police department that he was carjacked and that the folks ripped the camera head off of the window and set the car on fire while he was in it. Well, the car was totaled, the camera system was burned up. We took the black box, sent it to the manufacturer. They pulled every video, every image off of that camera system. The images showed that that guy was in the car by himself the entire ride. This guy goes to a place and he sets his car on fire for insurance fraud. Well, he went out of town, and when he came back, he was arrested. So those are some things that helped us reclassify. Now think about this. A few months later, we're going to be hosting the Super Bowl. So these individuals are talking about that the city of New Orleans is hiding crime because the Super Bowl is coming. So we had to reclassify that. So it went away from a carjacking to, to fraud. We also had an incident where you had a few dancers who were working with cab drivers, and the cab drivers actually they were working with intoxicated individuals. With dancers to rob intoxicated individuals. And the reason why I'm telling you all this information, because I want you to understand we have full audio in these cameras. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a video, and you're going to be amazed at what takes place in this video. Now this video that I'm about to show you, you have a young lady who's working with her pimp, and the cab driver is driving her around to 4 different locations. They guarantee him, they say that they're going to pay him so much money, but when he starts to see that they're making more money, he wants more money. All right, so what I'm going to show you is going to be the last clip, and it's going to be very interesting when you hear their interaction.
Okay, I will give you. Take me home. Come on, Tiffany. Cheap people. Nobody. Yes. They don't give you
Y'all fucking Arabians
Give me $10.
Hold on, I'm calling police agents.
No,
I
man.
done got
Hey, what's good? Your police friend and all of you. You don't know me?
You don't know me.
I know you. You are a prostitute. That's all.
Ain't a prostitute. I'll take that money, bitch.
Shut up. I know you will make this, you will create this thing when you reach home. I know you people. You are very, very polite and very decent when you are going. When you go home, you move your home, you start barking like this.
What are you talking about?
I will call the police again. I tell you, I know.
What are you talking about?
But what she's saying?
We're going home, man.
Home.
You have to pay.
See, but you made
He paid
me.
you almost $150 for
Yes, you have to pay.
Okay, we paid you.
Listen, just
Make a right.
you keep quiet, you don't talk.
Man, take it right. My house is right here.
I was so polite and so decent with you, but now you are...
I just want to know why you didn't run the meeting.
No, I know you why. You know why I didn't run the meter. All right, call the police. I know.
We're calling your company.
We don't call the police.
You just like the other cab drivers.
You have no
Yeah, we
shame.
got the video. We're going to rip it.
This is video. This is video. Look, this camera.
Okay.
Everything is recorded.
It's not-
Every of your word is recorded in it.
That don't matter, but your meters are recorded.
I
You
know,
get in
I
trouble
know.
for that.
You were not going on one place. You said go this way, go this way. I will pay
And
you
we
this.
paid
I
you
will pay you
every
that.
time.
Pay you every
We
time.
paid you
Please
every
keep
time.
quiet. Don't confuse my mind. Don't make me mad. I am a very mad person. I am very decent. I am very polite, and I am very decent. But I am very mad. I tell you.
I don't know why we paid you.
Hey, y'all, was probably them $200.
You act like we wasn't going to pay you or something, man.
No, but one should be decent when you are reaching your
He
home.
said the whole time. We've been giving you...
Then why are you?
With it is when the city of New Orleans cab drivers started to have cameras in them, the perpetrators started to target jurisdictions surrounding New Orleans that did not have camera systems. So we had a few cab drivers who were killed from surrounding jurisdictions that were called into the city of New Orleans. And those drivers were robbed.
Do you ever use this footage or the camera footage on citizen complaints? Like if someone says, the driver spit at me and, was really rude or something, do you pull the video for that, or do you only do it for criminal activity?
Well, we only do it for certain things, but, you know, and that's based on manpower, but we can do it for anything. We can set it up. What's ironic is this complaint actually came in. The young lady who's in the back seat complained that the cab driver grabbed her breast. So that's why we downloaded these images. But what we find out along the way is she was actually prostituting, and he was transporting her from location to location. And you're going to hear the dialogue, which is interesting, because obviously she didn't know that they had complete audio in the vehicles. If somebody was sitting in the front seat, you'll be able to see them as well. And then you see the forward-facing camera, which is at the bottom. This bottom right screen is actually a GPS video. So we didn't download the video, but we can actually freeze frames and see exactly where that location took place, because every one of the cameras actually have GPS coordinates. But with that, Jim, I'm going to go ahead and let somebody else present until we get this fixed.
I think one of the most important parts, though, of your presentation is that even though we couldn't hear it, you do allow audio in your jurisdiction, whereas other cities cannot, like we can't. We just promulgated new camera regulations this year. I had wanted the same thing, especially after finding out Malachi had it. I wanted to make sure that we could have. He told me how useful it was in investigations. However, the state of Pennsylvania does not allow it, so it was something that did not go through.
One of the incidents that we did have, the cab driver actually covered up his camera. But the funny part about it, he didn't cover up the forward-facing camera. So when the individuals got back in the car, the ones who robbed the intoxicated individuals, they went through step by step on exactly what took place in the house. So we knew everything that took place. They talked about how one took one guy in one room, one put another guy in a bathtub, lathered him up, said they were going to go get a condom, and then they robbed his house and ran out. So you had play-by-play. They actually had the guy's credit card. They asked the driver to stop at an ATM. They said his birthday will probably be his ATM code number, his PIN number. So let's go there. You'll see the young ladies getting out of the car, going to the ATM. It's just a play-by-play, and you hear the cab driver asking for things from for his child. He says he's been doing it over and over again. So these are all things we use in the prosecution of the individual, and everybody that we dealt with that violated this, they all lost their licenses.
Any jail time? Any jail time for the driver?
I'm not sure where the case went as far as the prosecution. He may have settled that the criminal case, but he lost his license in order to transport passengers in the city of New Orleans.
Is there one single vendor for these cameras, or are there multiple vendors?
Well, we set the minimum standards. all we do is require that individuals meet those standards. We actually have 2 approved vendors in the city of New Orleans, and those vendors are Verified and 24/7. This image that you're looking at now is a verified image. They both have pros and cons, but the thing that I like the most about the verified system is with Verified, when you download it into a WMV file, you can see all 3 files together. But when you download it on the 24/7, it only shows you 1 frame, unless you're using their key, which is fine if you have the software, but when you're trying to give it to law enforcement, they have to have that key as well to be able to see it set up like the way you see it now. Yes, sir.
Do you know if the city of New Orleans is going to require TNCs to have cameras?
I'll tell you, Robert, that's a good question, and the answer is no. And one of the things when we went to court and argued on, the industry was fighting against having to have cameras in their vehicles. And the distinction that we proved to them was, well, when you operate on demand, you don't know the passengers. So an individual flags you down, you get into the vehicle. This would be the same thing with e-hailing. But the difference between this and limousines is limousines are prearranged, individuals have already paid. You actually know that I'm going to be picking up Sergeant Mack. So you have all that information. So the chances of you being robbed like this are going to be pretty slim to none. We've seen in New York where the black livery car drivers have been targeted, but the black livery car drivers basically operate similar to taxi cabs around the country, and that's something that without a doubt I can assure you is going to happen throughout the community, especially in the city of New Orleans, because remember what I told you. When New Orleans started to require cameras, they stopped targeting cab drivers. They started targeting vehicles that did not have this type of equipment. And we can talk about, well, individuals only take credit cards for the TNCs. They don't just rob you for your cash. They rob you for your jewelry, they rob you for your cars. We've had a few incidents in New Orleans where individuals have used media outlets as far as like dating sites to meet up with individuals and actually rob them. So we know that that's going to happen here as well.
Let me introduce the folks that actually have worked on research on this issue and other driver safety measures, including shields, and Cami Menendez, Dr. Cami Menendez is here, and Zhenki Zheng, but I'm going to let Cami go first and talk about her research, effectiveness of taxicab security equipment in reducing driver homicide rates.
Okay. So, my name is Cami, and thank you so much for attending this session. Can y'all hear me? No? Wait for this. Is this better? Okay, I think this is better. So, go ahead, and if you could please, I'm a part of the IATR Safety Equipment Work Group, and so we focus, I work for the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and we focus on workplace safety. So we do research, Shanky and I do research, as opposed to OSHA, which focuses on regulation. Both wonderful agencies. If you could go ahead and advance, thank you. So I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. In case you didn't know, taxicab drivers face disproportionately higher fatality rates compared to many other occupations. In conversations I've had with taxicab drivers, I don't think they understand that they're one of the leading occupations for homicides in the United States, if not the workplace. So they are part of a unique work environment. I just finished conducting a study among convenience store workers, and there I had the privilege of studying robberies and robbery prevention among a population that had a stationary concrete structure with an address that I could go and visit and then administer a survey to managers. I don't have, and it's in a well-lit area, and there's ingress and egress is controlled with one set of doors usually, but with the taxicab driver population that I study, I don't have that privilege. Already they're in a confined space, a small mobile environment, and their customers sit behind them. So already taxicab drivers are put at a vulnerable position. So to add to that, just like convenience store workers, but to add to that, their work tasks involve the handling of cash, not surprising, but picking up fares late at night or early in the morning, alone, in darkness, and often in isolated areas, not always well lit, and sometimes in high crime areas, and sometimes their fares, as Malachi mentioned, are under the influence of drugs or alcohol. And those work tasks, that is never going to change. It's just kind of how it is. Unfortunately, those parts are kind of part of the job. But we can still make their experience safer. So the research suggests that we've worked on that safety equipment can be effective, especially cameras. And this is a paper that was published last year, the American Journal of Preventive Medicine, 2013. And then Shanky just finished working on evaluating all these different camera safety features in the lab. So if you can go on to the next slide, thanks. So what I would like to do, since I've already done a lot of my work on cameras and I'm about to go into the field again in Houston to interview 500 taxicab drivers with surveyors, not me personally, but a group of us. We're going to compare those drivers their experiences that have cameras versus those cab drivers that don't, and then I'm looking to go into another city. While we're doing that, what I would like for all of us to work on, for those of you who want to volunteer, and I already have some volunteers from the board of directors, is work on a safety tips card to promote safety, health behavior among taxicab drivers. And this is aligning earlier with what they mentioned for the Vision Zero, for those of you who attended the presentation, is that you want a nice safety promotion component of it rather than just being punitive all the time. So we're trying to head off and just have a daily reminder for taxicab drivers to have in their visor of safety tips that they can be doing all the time, every day, inexpensive, just things they should be doing. This was the brainchild of Malachi, who 2 years ago, when the Super Bowl was coming, said, this is something that we need. We're going to have a lot more drivers than we normally have. Drivers coming from different cities to work during the Super Bowl. And I've noticed every city does different trainings. So what some cab drivers might be trained in one city, they're not introduced to or trained in another city. So we thought this would be a fabulous idea. It would be a practical, portable, inexpensive measure to remind drivers, again, of tips for safe behaviors and measures. I have examples of some safety cards here. So it would be in this cardstock, this thickness, this size. This is the key one. This is an example of one that we've done on home health coworkers, because home health coworkers, nurses, drive around to people's houses. You can imagine the kind of workplace violence issues that they may face. It's not going to be robbery, but sometimes, you know, you get some unhappy, sick people that sometimes take their illness out on the driver. So here are a few you can look at. Please pass these around. So the safety cards would be in that type of cardstock, which is pretty durable, and they could also, again, put it on their visor. So again, the safety tips card, it shows support of major agencies that we care about taxi cab driver safety, and that we're creating a project. We're going to try and co-brand it, but we're creating a product to help taxi cab drivers. We want to promote safety rather than punitive measures. We're not involved in fining. We just want this to be a health promotion tool. And again, it's an easy, practical, accessible product to have, especially for new drivers or drivers from other cities or drivers who haven't had training in many years and they need reinforcement of these messages. And so we want a constant reminder. And again, for those of you who are reading some of those, what is common sense to some people is not common sense to others. So you have taxi cab drivers that haven't necessarily been trained, if ever, or they haven't had training that some cities excel at. I know there are some cities that really do excellent taxi cab driver safety training. And it's very important that what might be obvious to you or some of us in the room from our experience is not obvious to the taxi cab drivers. So, let's go ahead to the next slide. Thank you. So the purpose of this presentation is to identify useful safety measures, specifically for those of you who want to volunteer and help out with this project, and this will not be time intensive. I mean, like a few hours of your time over the course of a year. I just want your input. Specifically, what safety measures should we include? Should we limit the safety measures to robberies, robbery prevention, or with Vision Zero, should we also include safety measures on road safety? I would ask, because all of you are very experienced, you can reflect and take from your own city training that you guys offer. If you think it's an important tip and it's generalizable to all cities, because we want this card to be able to be handed to a taxi cab driver in any city, and it will help reinforce common safety tips that everybody should use, every taxi cab driver should use. Also, we're looking to you guys to help us prioritize the tips. You know which ones are more crucial to least crucial, or if you want to prioritize them for most generalizable or basic to least generalizable. One of the more basic tips could be make sure you complete your trip sheet. Number one, they should always be completing their trip sheet, and number two, in a well-lit area. Also, we want to make sure that they're depositing their cash throughout the day, several times a day, in their banks, so that they're riding around with the least bit of cash possible. That's something that no matter what any city's regulations require, every taxi cab driver should be doing that. Involving the International Association of Transportation Regulators adds credibility to our product. We at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, we do our best work when we involve the community we're trying to serve. You know what works best for your drivers in terms of safety. Our proposed timeline is we'd like to have something put out on the third quarter of fiscal year 2015. That's next year, the end of next summer. We want these cards. We envision that a stack of them be available at every licensing office of the major cities in the U.S. And of course, they'd be available online. For those folks who, and these you can keep, you can pass these around, but for those folks who maybe don't have access to a licensing office, or they're not in a major city that would have them, or their city has run out, that's what they look like if you just print them as a PDF on a regular sheet of paper. I use the color I use color ink, but you wouldn't necessarily have to use it. And that's how they come out, so they could still kind of fold them and tuck them into their visor. Let's go ahead and do the thank you. So in the interest of not trying to reinvent the wheel, we do have some resources already available for guidance. Our colleagues, our wonderful colleagues at OSHA within the Department of Labor, a few years ago put out an OSHA fact sheet on preventing violence against taxi and for-hire drivers. They already have some wonderful tips. They already have some wonderful resources. This is one of the resources, all of it already available that we can use to create these safety tips. And I'm going to pass that around, and we have a sheet right here, and these you can keep as well. This is the website if you want to look at it. But also, Malachi, a couple of years ago, your sheriff's department had also provided a list of something, and I remember looking at it. It was also very, very helpful. So we have a pool of safety measures and safety tips that we can already draw from. And if you'd like to volunteer and provide input or review these, it would be incredibly helpful. And if you want to, and I'll send these around and you can keep these. So I just want to say thank you. If you want to participate, go ahead and send your resume or bio sketch, something that I can justify to the folks that I work with that you have experience and you work in this field. And we'll go ahead and we'll get you involved in this product. So thank you very much.
In concert with Kami's work, Shenki Zheng's work, followed up with minimum standards for taxi cab cameras. Shenki, you want to talk about that? Great.
My name is Shankar Zheng. I work for the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. My topic is the minimum requirement for the taxi cab security cameras. I have 31 slides, so I have to cut some slides to make the presentation shorter.
Thank you.
Okay, first I'll talk about the background. As we know, the homicide rate of the taxi cab industry is about 20 times higher than that of the all workers. So some cities have the local ordinances to specify the requirement metrics for the taxi cab security camera systems. But these ordinances do not provide the engineering evidence of the methodologies, procedures, and the evaluations. So the objectives of our study is to quantify the minimum technical requirements for taxi cab security camera systems using engineering methodologies, procedures, and evaluations to allow the in-cab passenger facial identification in various life conditions and seat positions. So our method, the overview is we have proposed 5 the image quality metrics, and to determine these 5 metrics using under 4 extreme light conditions and in 3 cab seats. Using 2 cameras. One is a color camera, another one is infrared camera. The procedures, we have 6 procedures. We proposed 5 photographic image quality metrics. First is a resolution, that is a facial detail the camera can provide. And the second one is highlight dynamic range, which is the image quality in strong light conditions. Third is a shadow dynamic range, which is the image quality in twilight condition. And lens distortion, finally, is a motion blur, which is the camera shutter speed limit. So for each of these 5 metrics, we generate 5 degrees, 6 quality degrees of these pictures, and to send the pictures to the photo evaluators and to evaluate the threshold. So the for each of these metrics, we'll generate these 6 degrees of quality image under 4 extreme light conditions and 3 cap conditions. So the combination of the picture taken will be enormous. We took about over 10,000 pictures. For the 4 extreme light conditions, we use strong daylight. And the second one is moonless dark. The third one is a moonless dark with backlight. And the fourth one, the sunset via the rear window. We use 3 cap seat positions. Front right, rear right, and the rear middle. The 2 left side seats were omitted because they are symmetric to the right side seats. 6 procedures. The first one is we try to measure the real light condition. Actual light condition in the open field in a retired police car to simulate the taxi cab. And the second, we'll use the artificial lights to reconstruct these 4 light conditions in NIOSH lab in the simulate taxi cab in order to get a consistent light conditions through all these picture taking. 3, will take a photograph in-cab human subject face charts. We have 10 human subjects, but we cannot photograph the real human subject faces because we needed to get a consistent and uniform image quality. So we have to use the subject face chart. And we use 2 cameras, and under 4 light conditions, 3 seat conditions, we took about over 10,000 pictures. Finally, we categorize 4,000 qualified pictures into 78 image sets, sorted by the image quality, by light condition, and by seat positions. Then we'll send these sets of the facial images to 13 volunteer photo evaluators, and in order to determine the minimum acceptable threshold by voting. And these photo evaluators had experience in in-cab face identification, and 9 out of 13 evaluators even have had quality experience. Finally, we'll conduct the statistic analysis on these threshold votes and to determine the minimum requirements. This is a diagram of the artificial light reconstruction. We use 7 LED, white LED panels, and with the equivalent of 500 watts of luminance. And also use 4 incandescent lights to simulate the warm light colors in sunset condition. This is our lab equipment setup in the NIOSH lab. Here is the retired police car. And these are the LED panels, and these are the incandescent lights. And the camera, here is the camera, and this is the face charts. And in here, we have an infrared light source. The reason we use a human face chart is first to get a consistent image quality, and second, the face chart, we can use face chart to measure the face human face resolution and dynamic range and the motion blur. This is a test chart. In the face chart, we have a slanted square insert. This square insert is used by the computer software to measure the resolution. And here we have We have a 9-stripe pattern blocks, which were used to control the camera focus to get a uniform resolution. Here we have a 20-step gray wedge scale. These gray steps were used to measure the dynamic range. We have 10 human subject inserts, face inserts, to insert these face insert to the chart and to measure the resolution and the dynamic range. And this is a graded face chart we use to measure the lens distortion. Here we have a rotating face board. We use this face board to measure the motion blur. When the camera photographs this rotating board, the rotating board is rotating at a speed of 18 RPM. So we use different shutter speeds to get 6 degrees of motion blur. This group of pictures were taken for resolution measurement. And we use the different focal length, the camera focal length, to get the 6 degrees of the resolution from the highest resolution, about 1,000 lines per head height. The head height is about 25 centimeters. To the most blurred picture, so 32 lines per head height. So when I took picture, we took pairs. The face chart and the resolution chart. So each pair, they share the same resolution. We cannot measure the resolution of the human face. So first we use a computer software to measure the resolution of this slanted square. And then we'll know the resolution of the face is the same for each pair. The resolution in the green color frame is the final selection for our threshold. It's about 75 lines per head height. And this group of pictures were taken for dynamic range measurement. The upper row pictures are for the highlight dynamic range measurement. So we generate 6 degrees of a dynamic range. You see the washed out gray steps. Here we have 2 washed out gray steps. And the worst picture, we have 6 washed out gray steps. So here, this is the final threshold determined by the voters, by the evaluators. So we have no more than 3 washed out gray steps. Here, the lower row pictures are generated for the twilight dynamic range measurement. So we see the recognizable gray steps. The less recognizable gray step, the worse the picture quality. So finally, we chose the evaluators just chose 10, at least 10 recognizable gray steps as a threshold. These pictures were generated for lens distortion. We cannot use a camera to generate the lens distortion, so we use a computer software to alter the image, the pictures, to generate lens distortion from 15% to 75%. And 30% is the final selection for the threshold. These pictures are generated using 6 different shutter speeds to generate 6 degrees motion blur. You see, finally, the final selection of threshold is 1/30th second. And the slower the shutter speed, and the worse the picture quality. So we send all these pictures to the photo evaluators. And finally, we generate the thresholds. For each category, we have 18 thresholds. in the different light condition and the seat condition and the different color, different cameras. For resolution, the worst case scenario threshold is 88 lines per head height, and this threshold was generated with a head height, standard head height of 30 centimeters. Okay. So I'll skip these results. We use the green color frames to determine the final threshold. So this is the same result. We'll skip this result and get to discussion. Finally, we found we determined the worst case scenario resolution as 75 lines per head height for a 99 percentile male head height is 25.5 centimeters. And that is resolution is equivalent to XGA format. That's 1024 by 768 pixels. And VGA image sensors for commonly used for the taxi fleets cannot satisfy these resolution requirements. And also we should mention the blooming effect for the CCD image sensors. And the CCD image sensors tend to move the electric charges from the overexposed pixels to the neighborhood pixels. And this electric charge movement will deteriorate the image quality in a strong backlight condition. You see the more washed out, you have a more washed out the gray steps, and then you get a more blooming effects. So because of the blooming effects, we have two thresholds for the highlight dynamic range. One is for CCD sensor, one is for CMOS sensor. And for lens distortion, the threshold range spreads from 30% to 60%. So that means that the human eyes are not sensitive to the lens distortion in the facial identification. So for the lens distortion and shutter speed, these are not the big challenge for common cameras because most of the common cameras they can do this distortion, can do the quality distortion less than 30%, and the shutter speed higher than that.
How many more slides do you have?
Two. Mm-hmm. Conclusions: we have 5 worst case scenario thresholds we mentioned above. And we mentioned the blooming effects of CCD image sensors. So the CCD image sensors will deteriorate the facial image and identification in the backlight condition. And these minimum requirements will help the taxicab regulators and the fleets to select the effective taxicab security cameras and help the camera manufacturers to improve the camera design. And I will thank 15 people.
And this research has been published this past summer in 2 journals?
In the Journal of Transportation Technologies. And here, this is my contact information, my email address, and the article website. I think this presentation is in your thumb drive.
And the article website, that's a free download. Sorry, so is mine. It's freely accessible. It's a free download.
Right.
It's on the thumb drive.
Those are open access. The article.
It's an open access journal, so you can download freely.
And in Philadelphia, we've actually used Schenke's research and his results and the guidelines for minimum requirements for cameras in our regulations. So I'm sure it'll be a valuable tool for any other jurisdiction as well. Next up, we have Benoit from Montreal describing his new camera regulations.
Why don't you try my last name?
No. I want to see it written out first. Then I'll do it phonetically.
Well, thank you. Since I'm the last one, I'm going to keep your interest up, and I'm going to present in French. So, Okay, well, we're gonna pass very fast on the presentation, but what we wanted to talk to you about was the all of the measures that we're gonna put in place about security of our taxi drivers is due to lots of work from the Bureau of Taxi, but thanks to the work of NIOSH and other jurisdictions. Yes, thank you. Jurisdiction that implemented security measures, we were able to convince the City Hall, the City of Montreal, to go forward with new measures about driver safety. So about the history. In 1997, we passed a report concerning, it was on 41 recommendation. It went to from seeing new technology, putting a button, panic button inside the taxis, 911. It went everywhere, but we didn't have a line that we could take and to implement everything that we wanted to. So by 2009, there was a taxi driver that got murdered in Montreal. So we've been asked to form a committee just to look the 41 recommendation and to put it up to date. And we met with taxi industries people, municipal organization and governmental organization, as well as customers. And by 2010, we implemented a new bylaw in Montreal, which you see the new dome light that was implemented in Montreal. And behind that dome light was mandatory that we had a 911 warning sign so that people, our taxi driver, if they were feeling unsafe, they could just push that button. And for those who were linked with GPS or geo localization, people would be able to call the police and send the police to the taxi driver. Also in 2010, we participated in Cammy's study about partition versus camera systems. In 2013, we also participated in Shinkei's study, which was something that helped us a lot passing the new regulation that we're going to be putting in place by 2015. By 2013, last year in April, we did a pilot project for the MV1, but the Bureau of Taxi was really concerned about the camera systems. We asked the people within the pilot that was done, how did they feel with the camera system, you know, filming them? Were they feeling safe, unsafe, or was there some discomfort, you know, seeing a camera? And the overall result that we had was 95% of the people were happy to see camera system protecting them from maybe abuse from the taxi drivers, and the taxi drivers felt more secure. So it was a good thing for us to join this in our pilot. So as for partition and cameras, it's legal in Montreal to put some cameras in partition inside taxis. But in the last 15 years, since it's not mandatory, only one partition was installed in the last 15 years. And since we had taxi driver that got murdered in November 2013, then we had lots of camera systems installed taxis, but it's anything, you know, from the baby camera that you buy at the store, the people put them, there's no safety measures, no nothing. So we had to go to a public hearing. And what we presented the city hall is that we wanted, we can go to the other slide, next one. Next one, please. Next one. Hey, it's fast, eh? Okay, so at the public hearing, we propose different safety measures. We know that by putting mandatory camera system inside a taxi will not solve all of the criminal activities in a taxi. It's all of the measures, like Malachi was saying, we had to implement, make mandatory by regulation the installation of a camera system in the vehicle with access to the data protected by a black box. That's very important. Oversee the installation and the operation of the data access of the camera system by regulation, and require by regulation the implementation of an electronic payment system to reduce cash in vehicle. We talk about all of the electronic payment system. Also, we want to evaluate maybe the possibility to go and ask for payment in advance for different places in Montreal where it's less safer, or during nighttime, maybe people could ask for payment before they do the ride. So we talk about also safety training and driver safety, and all of the electronic geolocation. Hey, thank you. The GPS thing.
Close.
Yeah, thank you. So the city listened to us, and thanks to the IATR, which sent resume helping us to implement our proposal. Thanks to Shenke Study and Cami, I'm not here to do some advertising, but what I can tell you is if we wouldn't have the IATR helping us in Montreal, and Cami Study and Shenke Study, for sure I wouldn't be here talking to you about the new regulation and the policy that's been adopted by the City Hall. Because I don't know for you guys, but for us, what we've been asked is it really working, and which jurisdiction is implementing it. So with the help of IATR, we were able to go with that. So by August 2014, our mayor announced the launch of a new taxi policy in Montreal. There's 5 lines of action. These 5 lines of action are not only talking about driver safety, but as you can see, it's a little revolution for Montreal taxis. We're going to be looking into new technologies, increase when you see the diversified clientele by positioning it in the center of transportation industry. What it means is that we're going to have universally accessible taxis and green taxis too, but we're going to be able to put the taxi in all of the transport offer in Montreal, not a side bencher or a back bencher, but in the transport offer in Montreal. So that's a big gain for the taxi industry. We're also going to ensure security for drivers and customers, and contribute to the branding of Montreal. All of the tourists, even here in New Orleans, we all go, the first thing that we see is a taxi. So we want to be sure that there's some training given to our taxi drivers, and some safety measure that we can tell people, you know, what should you expect from a taxi driver when you go in Montreal. So I'm going to finish it with that. Okay. And what I can tell you is that by 2015, when you're going to be coming to Montreal, I hope that we're going to be able to show you our new bylaw, which all of these safety measures that we fought for the last 5 years are going to be included in. So, thank you.
We have one question out here.
Yes.
Just regarding the payment in advance, a couple of years ago, the City of Calgary introduced a provision where drivers can request a deposit of up to $30 at any time, not just at night. And what we are finding is we need to look at it a little more closely from a training point of view, because in our most recent report from Calgary Police Services on violent crime involving taxi drivers, the $30 deposit and asking of that was one of the catalysts for violence. So it had an unintended consequence. There was a highly publicized case about a Calgary Stampeder, the football club, where a footballer was asked for, the driver asked him for the deposit, and
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because we're not sure about that measure too.
now if it's requested in we think it's in the ask, and the sensitivity in which it is asked for, but it needs to be looked at a little more.
All right, we have another question.
Hi, this is Emily from Lyft. This is just like putting a lot of bells off for me, because we, of course, on our platform have everyone pay by credit card. So our system is entirely cashless. And we've seen over and over again, by removing that component of the interaction between driver and passenger, I mean, not only does it result in much more reliable payment by passengers, because we can collect from them from their credit card, but we also just are preventing that kind of conflict and reducing the likelihood of any violence to the driver, because we have the identifying information of the passenger and as well as their geolocation for any rides that are given, so they know that there's accountability there. So those are some mechanisms that I don't know if it would be feasible to adopt those for a taxi type system, but they've been really helpful for us in minimizing those kinds of driver safety incidents.
Users of apps.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
If I could just touch on that, Emily, what you're saying makes a lot of sense, but in the cab industry, they're required to take cash as well as credit card. And as we know, only 42% of the U.S. population have smartphones. If you look at individuals that are 65 years and older, that number goes up to 82%, and only 30% of the U.S. population has credit cards. So that's going to be a concern there. But what I mentioned earlier is we don't only see individuals robbing individuals for their cash. They're also carjacking them. They're also robbing them for their jewelry. And if you think about the new platform with the new TNCs, they want drivers to be dressed up. And normally when you're dressed up, you present more of an affluent look. And individuals are going to probably target you more often than not. And just in New Orleans alone, since 1994, we've had 22 cab drivers killed. And you talk about individuals operating on demand, even though TNCs may make the claim or the promotion that you know who that individual is, we always create relationships with our passengers. So TNCs are going to be parking by bars, they're going to be parking by restaurants, they're going to create relationships with the doormen and with the bartenders. I know we had an incident in LA probably early summer where a young lady was placed in a vehicle and she was inebriated, and the next thing she woke up the next morning, she's in the driver's bed because she couldn't tell the driver, you know, how to get to her location. That's something that we're going to see all around the city. I also mentioned about a rape of a Loyola student by a cab driver. And this cab driver was not dispatched. He was just riding around. And that's something that we're going to see TNCs do as well, because at the end of the day, every driver that operates for a TNC, with the majority of them, are going to be coming from the for-hire industry. So all you're doing is just moving that same driver over to a different class of transportation where you don't have the restrictions, you don't have the mandated camera systems, you don't have those things, which in the end, it's just going to move the problem, because we're going to go back to the city of New Orleans and other cities, even Philadelphia, where now Philadelphia requires cameras. These individuals are going to go to cars where they don't require cameras, and they're going to commit the same crimes. So that's something that's important.
Something to your comment. In Montreal, the taxi driver is obliged to take only cash money. So everything about the credit card, the electronic payment, is not mandatory. So we have to start somewhere. And if, like Lyft or any company, you decide when your customers register who you're going to deserve, who you're going to serve. If there's a taxi driver that is not complying with your rules, you can kick him out. And the same thing for a customer that doesn't want to pay. But still, that customer is going to be driven around by other taxis. So we have to be sure that our bylaw is set for everybody. But it's not a bad thing, but for us, we have to, yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry, no, but anecdotally speaking, and I'm a little bit biased, I work for a verified camera company, but I landed at O'Hare a few weeks ago, flying home from somewhere, and I have no direct evidence that it was an Uber driver, but there was a black sedan SUV, and the driver got out, and 30 feet behind the car came walking up a businessman with his roller luggage, and the driver popped the trunk, and I don't know what had transpired, but within seconds, they were fists cocked back, ready to kill each other. Like an umpire and manager knows that I don't know what the argument was. And I did not jump in between them, but I encouraged both of them not to get into the altercation that their wives would kill them. And so when they parted, what was funny was, and sign of the times, was that they both had their smartphones out, and they were both videotaping each other, and they were both threatening the other that their career was over because they were going to give each other a terrible rating on whatever system it was they were using. So my point is, Lyft, anybody, you know, for the driver and the passenger, you want to have, there's going to be an altercation, and they're going to want to prove what happened one way or the other, and cameras can help that as well. But it happens. It's not always just the worst of crimes. It can be a dispute over you didn't pick me up at the right time.
Yeah, what you're saying makes sense. Also, Tom Drisher is the regulator for the city of Los Angeles just in the year of 2014, and I want to say this was between January 1st through August 1st. They had actually written 134 violations to TNCs for their drivers accepting cash, not accepting credit cards, and I know Houston did an undercover sting as well. The insurance commissioner did an undercover sting, and they actually had video where all the TNC drivers started to accept cash. We mandate credit card systems in the city of New Orleans. You know, that was something that we did under my watch, but even though there's a credit card system which is mandated in there, the drivers still want to take cash, and that's not going to change. So whether you're in a TNC vehicle, whether you're in a licensed taxi cab, they're still going to want to take cash.
I just want to say for the record, TNC vehicles are not allowed to pick up at the airport, so whatever happened there did not really happen. Or happened legally.
Yeah. All right, can we move on? There's one more presentation, and it's mine. I'm going to keep it short and sweet because, oh, I'm sorry, you have a question? No, are you sure?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Like I said, we want to keep it short. Matt had said to me that we want to hear from
Now, he
everybody.
wants to know, was there ever a time where, or when do you think will be a time where you only accept credit cards, basically? Because he's in Milan, and the same issue is happening there, but most people don't use credit cards.
We were actually talking, they want to know, he wants to know if there's going to be a point in the future when taxis will only be accepting credit cards. And I think that was sort of raised today in one of Matt's presentations. We said, what's it going to be like 5 years from now? Is everybody only going to be contracting with these services by app? Only credit cards, no cash at all? Who knows? We don't know, but it's moving more and more toward that.
In Canada, we don't have, let's say like in the US, everybody uses a credit card. But in Canada, not lots of people use credit card. It's debit card linked to their own personal checking account. So we have to...
We also, in Philadelphia, we mandate credit card acceptance. We've done that since 2006. At that time, maybe only 12 to 20% of the transactions were credit card. Everything else was cash. Now it's 60% of credit card transactions, of taxi trips are paid by credit card.
Thank you.
Sure.
Jim, I think it's also going to still be difficult because if only 30% of the U.S. population, 30% of the U.S. population does not have credit cards, it's going to be difficult to only mandate credit cards because that 30%
Yeah.
would not be to get transportation. And in order for you to have a debit card, you have to have a bank account. They run your credit in order for you to get your bank account. So the disenfranchised and the low income and the folks that are our elderly and senior citizens, those are going to be the individuals that are going to be left behind.
Yeah, that's a fair point. In Philadelphia, we, like in Montreal, we were also inspired by Cammy's and Schenke's work, but more so we were inspired by the, over the years we've had several awful incidents of cab drivers being shot, knifed, whatever, killed. First half of 2013, we had 2 drivers die that were shot while they were working, and another couple of high-profile incidents where there were knifings. So, with our board, decided to actually seek regulations, to put regulations in place, to put cameras in all cabs. So, the regulation that we promulgated over the past year requires installation of an approved safety camera system. Like Malachi and New Orleans, we've approved Verify and 24/7. They seem to be the 2 best camera solutions throughout the country, and actually outside the country. They're required to record all images of the. You can go on. Next one. That just shows our industry. 1,600 medallion taxi cabs, 12 dispatchers, about 3,700 drivers. These are the regulations I was just talking about. Each installation requires multiple cameras because we still require shields in every cab. And we've done that since before the PPA ever even took over. It was under the Pennsylvania PUC that they required shields because there were so many violent incidents against drivers. And that was back in the 90s. So when we held public hearings about this, the driver said, we want to keep the shields, but we also want cameras. And usually with the way this was done in other cities across the country, it was either, you make a choice, either cameras or shields. But again, they felt more safe with the shields in the cars, but also wanted the added benefit of the cameras. So that's what is going to be, that's what's mandated actually. We're at the point now where cameras, the regulation has just been passed. Cameras are going to be required to be in every cab by January, probably the end of January. Most of them by the end of the year. And go to the next slide. Oh wait, where was the photograph? There, this one.
Did you catch that guy, Jim?
This is a configure. No, he got away, despite your camera system. But this is, because of the shield, actually, we've had a lot of incidences where the drivers were attacked through their driver's side window, either by camera, by gun, or by knife. So we are looking at, and most likely going to install cameras that point across in the front seat. They'll get the images of the driver and the passenger, but also could capture some photographic data of anyone approaching from the outside. And then there's a camera, of course, that will capture the images in the back seat. Next slide. The general functions are that the cameras will record images at various frame rates depending upon the situation, and stored locally within the taxi cab. Data stored will be encrypted with access to those images. They'll be restricted to us as the local regulator and law enforcement. The camera system has to be capable of recording at any time that the taxi's in operation. And unlike any other taxi camera system that we know of, Philadelphia system will be required to work in conjunction with the approved meter system. The taxi technology system that's provided by Verifone and by CMT in Philadelphia. It's include full face of the driver and all occupants seated in the passenger seats facing forward, and among other requirements, in PPA's SPR, which is our service provider requirements for taxi technology vendors. Images accessed must be of a level of clarity described in Schenke's minimum requirements for taxi security cameras, the NIOSH requirements. The date and the time of the recording must be there. The taxi cab number and the camera serial number must all be reported with each of those images. And a unique function of our system is the physical or virtual interface with the taxi meter system. The camera system will record the images and store them within the camera's local hard drive or SD card, and then send designated images related to each trip to the taxi meter system to transmit the data wirelessly to our eFleet database. So essentially, we access all the information from both Verifone and CMT, through Verifone and CMT for each taxi trip. And that assists us greatly in all of our investigations. So physically integrating with the taxi meter tech system entails preparation of an API to give the meter vendor access to the images to transmit with their existing cellular network. Virtual integration, which we're leaning more toward at this point, requires the camera vendor to create their own cloud-based cellular network to host the images until retrieved through the meter company's access software. Again, some benefits: distress button calls from drivers immediately activate real-time forwarding of in-cab images to the taxicab dispatcher's office. Camera meter integration will provide for almost instantaneous retrieval of evidence needed in police and regulatory enforcement investigations. The ability to access information without having to interrupt the driver's shift to retrieve the data from his cab's local storage is another great benefit. And that's just a photo of the panic button, distress button in any cab. So, does anyone have any questions? Yes?
So, do I understand correctly that at the end of a trip, the images from that trip get sent to a cloud?
That's what, yes, but they're channeled through the meter system, and they'll be attached to the trip number for that trip, for everything, including the fare. We get all of that information now through GPS. We know exactly what was paid. We know the driver. We know who's locked in at the time. And yeah.
That's
Yes.
happening now.
Well, that's happening now. We just don't get the photographic images yet because the cameras are not in the cars yet.
Oh, okay, end of
Yeah.
January.
But once, yes.
And you've tested that?
It's
Like that works?
not yet, but if that doesn't work, we're going to do the more complicated solution, which we first proposed, which they all work together with both Verifone and CMT to provide that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Impressive.
So I'll report back next year to let you know how it works out.